Hello everyone and welcome to my Blood Bowl 2 video review. I was lucky enough to be granted a review copy of this by Cyanide Studios so I could gather the footage and get an early look at the full product. I have to say, it's pretty cool, but not without its flaws at times. To kick off, sorry about the pun, I'll briefly describe what Blood Bowl is for anyone out there who doesn't know what the hell this is. Basically, Blood Bowl is a Games Workshop title that started life as a tabletop version of American football with the tabletop settings Warhammer characters. So this means you have teams of orcs, humans, dwarves, elves, chaos, skaven and more running around in teams of 11, beating the crap out of each other and trying to score touchdowns when they can. Cheating, though, in Blood Bowl is actively encouraged. Things like bribing the ref, fouling down players, bringing mages to the pitch to cast spells, that kind of thing. It's pretty crazy, vampires, all kinds of mad shit. But it's simple, it's fun, and it's quite strategic. So, with that out of the way, what's in this game? Blood Bowl 2 has several new features over the original title. First off is the campaign mode, which sort of acts as a kind of tutorial for new players and an introduction to the world overall. The campaign has you playing as the Reichland Reavers. Players of the tabletop will know that this was quite a popular team from the old tabletop days, but these are now a version of the team that have long since passed their heyday, and they've hit hard times, and you're the new coach who's been there to bring them back to their former glory. Each match is essentially a sort of, I guess like a narrative level, with each one having a little story beforehand, and there's tutorial sections that show off different aspects of the rule as you play. Eventually be going into like the full-fledged, Blood Bowl 2, so newer players can sort of go through that, learn the ropes, and then they can learn how to play against the different teams and see how a human team is different from a dwarf team, how a human team is different from a skaven team, and so on and so forth. The old commentary team of Jim and Bob, if anyone remembers the ogre and the vampire commentary duo from the original game, they're now full 3D. They make references to this being in Cabal Vision HD quite regularly. And I think even Bob has a chance in the campaign. I think if you fulfill certain goals, he will actually join the Reichland Reavers, so you can have him as a big guy for your human team. And they basically provide the exposition between the actual single-player matches, talking about other shady practices going off the pitch, things like ogre mafia types and bribery and certain former coaches who are being hunted down and that kind of stuff, and how it impacts you during the game. I don't see many veteran players jumping straight into it. Maybe if they just want to have a quick look and see what it's like. Probably on the consoles I could see this being an achievement thing, but on the PC it's not really a really important aspect. But it does help that it carries over for newer players, so they can jump straight into the multiplayer. So team creation, customization is back in the game, but I would say it's a bit of a mixed bag. Simple enough to pick your team, and you can name all your players, you can start buying easy enough, but it's a shame that visually the players, I think, are a little bit limited, as in you can't really alter the colour channels all that much. It'd be nice if you could change, say, the colour of the helmet, or you could change the colour of the shoulder pads, that kind of thing, so you can make a really sort of unique team for you. There are a fair number of colour mixes in there, but I wouldn't say there's that real in-depth customization that they would like. It's also a shame that as players rank up, they don't get improved gear. They don't look visually different for leveling up, which is a bit of a shame, because in the original game you could do that. Although the players themselves do look really nice, really detailed graphically. There's lots of little bits and pieces going on there, but one of the other slightly irritating things, if you prefer having tabs and such, is as you're buying players for a team that you're creating, there's no real quick way of being able to go over and buy a reroll without having to jump through different menus. It's a little bit difficult. I don't know whether that's a holdover from having to think about making the game's UI based around a controller, but it's not massive. It's not a massive issue, but I could see some people getting annoyed with it. But yeah, the main thrust of Blood Bowl 2 is the online suite, whereas the multiplayer options go. You can now create leagues of over, I think it's 128 teams that can compete at one time. I'm not sure if there will be any leagues that get that big. But they can run things, they can have ladders, round robin, and you can do sort of traditional tournament knockouts events, and players who are the president of that particular league. I think you can assign different coaches and the such, or different owners of the league, I guess you could say. They can award different, depending on the position you come in, you get different rewards. It's very geared toward creating very large sort of living, breathing leagues. One of the nice aspects is that as players obviously rank up and they start to gain money and they have other matches and the such, you'll be able to have a player-driven marketplace, which is really cool. You'll be able to buy and sell players on that marketplace, and in a kind of Football Manager style, when there'll even be a transfer window open. And you have to keep an eye on this because some of your players can actually retire if they get old enough. Now, as far as the online play goes, there can be some people who are new who may feel like they get stomped a lot, and that is just the nature of Blood Bowl. The game is entirely based around the RNGesus aspect of it. So it's one of those things where even a losing match, you can still come out with some experience for your players, and that's how your teams get bigger and better. I mean, it sucks when they get injured, or it sucks even worse when they die, but just getting for a match generally gives you some XP here and there that your players will get better overall. There is the option for those of you who don't want to play online multiplayer. You can run the exact same leagues in single player, and the AI will just generate teams, and you can just go from there. And I think you can even add in all of your own teams as well to those leagues, so you can just have like an entirely player-run league for the AI and yourself. It's quite a nice option. I know it's one I'll be taking advantage of. Another nice feature is called Cabal Vision, which acts as a kind of live streaming and replay function for players who want to analyse their previous matches and see where they went wrong and where they went right. But the live streaming section is quite interesting because it keeps up the previous 5 matches that were played, that then you can just stream yourself and see how other people play. But you can also specifically search out, say, a friend's match, and you can watch that live as they play. And yeah, I could see that being quite popular again for things like esports and for these player-run leagues, and just sort of getting pointers yourself. How you could have someone who you may not be able to play with them, but they might be able to play a match and show you different tactics, that kind of thing. So it's a really, really nice addition. I think Cabal Vision will be quite popular. It would be nice to have some options, maybe for things like being able to chat to the other players while they actually play the match, being able to possibly, even as an esports thing, possibly being able to draw on the screen to show anyone who'd be watching, and that kind of thing, like where they're moving players and that kind of thing. I think that they could iterate on this a bit more, but as it stands, it's quite good from the off. And the actual matches themselves, the ebb and flow is quite nice. Matches are quite easy to get into. The controls are very simple to learn. You can control it entirely just via mouse clicks, or if you're one of those players on PC who prefer using your gamepad, the option is there. So Cyanide have really gone out at least to include both control styles, which is nice. I would recommend when you're using the mouse to be a little careful with the end turn button, because that is sort of in the bottom right of the screen, and you can sometimes potentially accidentally click that button and end your turn, which can mean life or death in some Blood Bowl matches. On average, I found that games take around about 40 minutes, close to an hour. It depends on the style of play of both players and whether turnovers occur and that kind of thing, and also the random nature of the game. Being adapted from tabletop, obviously there's a huge chance element of it, basically based on the die rolls, that can either completely ruin a game or turn one around on its head, and where you were losing quite badly, you can suddenly get a win. Now, I know some people might not like this aspect of it. They may not like the fact that there's less skill and more reliance on die rolls. So it's not going to be for everybody in that respect. If you prefer your sports titles where it's all based on how you play rather than relying on the computer to get you the roll, you might want to avoid this. Player progression is also quite important though for matches. Sometimes a win can be Pyrrhic, as I found. You can have a top player who can be killed, and this can happen to any player anytime. It's completely random, so sometimes just your average tackle, even a goblin tackling an ogre, if he's lucky enough, he can kill the ogre straight off, and these can be massive blows to your team, especially in finances. But it's just all element of Blood Bowl, and the animations for it are really nice. Just watching like how like a goblin, for instance, will do like a little forward roll, and he leaps into the air and sort of headbutts his opponents to. Dark Elves will be a little bit more showy, and they'll do like little spin kicks. Ogres are just no nonsense to just slap their opponents to the floor. It all looks really great. Animations in the new engine looks very, very pretty. Maybe a little fuzzy around the edges of some of the graphics. It might not be to everyone's taste, but it's functional enough. Players are extremely diverse in their appearance. You can really see that there's been a lot of effort put into really capturing the kind of personality of each race, like the way the Skaven will kind of skitter and twitch as they stand there, and the way that sort of elves and that will have a very sort of arrogant kind of stance to them. The way Bretonnian peasants will look like they're just going to start chewing on a raw spud at any moment, while the knights, the questing knights, will be stood there all proud in their armor, and the orcs just kind of like scratch their heads a bit and roar. Yeah, they've really caught the personalities of each and every race in there. There's no dialogue for the characters on pitch. They usually just communicate via grunts and clicks, but it's not really a loss in that regard. If you're one of those players who prefer a faster type of match, though, you can turn off all animations. These are the animations in regards to things like tackles and touchdowns and that, whereas they're just sort of bare bones. You click, then click the player you want to tackle. You'll still see them get knocked over, you just won't see the camera cuts, which is nice if you get a bit bored of them, and they can get a bit repetitive at times, I have to admit. And I don't know if, again, this isn't a massively important thing, but sometimes characters will clip through each other during the tackle animations, and if that irks you, you're going to be seeing that a lot unless you turn off the cutscenes. Speaking of repetition and keeping on that kind of bent with slightly negative things, Jim and Bob, the commentary team, can at times start to repeat themselves quite a lot. The first few matches it's fine, and they are quite genuinely funny at times, but there's only so many times you can hear Bob mention players being close enough to smell their breath and see the dead insects in their teeth until it's just sort of, that was funny. But the option is there again to mute them if you want. I did also notice that if you have the subtitles on, sometimes the subtitles will either be misspelt or they won't even be the same dialogue. It's kind of odd. It's like someone there didn't really translate it properly, or they just didn't really pay attention. But yeah, there are certain lines that just don't exist in the subtitles. It would be nice to have the ability as well when you're on the pitch to be able to see your players' names and most importantly the positions, because for some players it can be a bit difficult to tell a blitzer from a linesman. So I've noticed this especially with the human teams, and yeah, it's easy to make that mistake, especially when you're on a timer, which at max you can have 4 minutes per turn, and the shortest you can have it is 60 seconds. And sometimes when you're desperately trying to find the player on the pitch, it can get a little tense. You can set the camera to traditional Blood Bowl 1 camera if you want, but I found it was kind of odd that there wasn't the ability to rotate the camera 360 degrees, mainly so you could maybe see players a little better at times, or just be able to get a slightly better angle, because the 45-degree angle, especially with smaller races like the Dwarfs or the Skaven, it can be hard sometimes to see their players in front of a big guy like an ogre, unless you really zoom the map out. But yeah, it's a minor thing. Probably, though, the most egregious element on the PC side of things is there is a dearth of graphical options on the PC variant. Outside of being able to turn grass and spectators on and off, there is no ability to alter your graphical settings. It auto-detects your resolution, which you can change up and down if you wish, but I can't do anything. I can't turn off shadows, I can't turn off lighting, I can't even change the texture detail. It's literally just, that's it. There's 3 options to pick from, and I really think Cyanide need to fix that. They should definitely give PC players the options to tinker with their graphics settings. It's a key element of all PC games, and I'm kind of shocked that they didn't do that. As much as I like the visuals of the game and my system is good enough to run it, I know there are people out there who may not. They may have trouble, they may have performance issues, and they're not going to have the option to change any of those, and I think that's a big miss on Cyanide. That's probably the biggest problem I have with the game personally. I also noticed a couple of like weird bugs, control-wise. The strange one was if you use anything like TeamSpeak or any kind of online chat program, if you use Alt and then press S, I'm not sure if this is like a keyboard shortcut, but it will close the game without warning. So do not press Alt S. But yeah, outside of the couple little bits I mentioned, the UI issues, the camera issues, real lack of sort of customization options, really, then they're not holding the game back. Overall, Blood Bowl 2 is pretty good. It's not like Blood Bowl 1 Chaos Edition, true. You don't get all 20 plus teams. At the start, you're going to get 8. And I've been informed by Cyanide that the Lizardmen and Wood Elves, which are part of the pre-order packages, will be available within a fortnight of launch. So, it'll go up to 10 teams, which isn't terrible. And I can't see Cyanide leaving it at that. I could see them definitely adding more teams in the future. Now, obviously, I have a very different opinion of DLC. I don't mind it. I don't mind buying the extra teams as they come out, but if you are one of those players who prefer to get the whole package further down the line, you may want to do this. You may also want to wait based on certain elements about the graphics options or anything to do with performance that you may encounter. You may want to hold back a little longer, maybe wait for a couple of patches to see if anything gets sorted out. But as a launch title, it's pretty good. Plays well, it's very smooth. No technical issues I encountered. I didn't have any hard crashes, I didn't have any graphical errors, I didn't have any sound errors or anything like that. It ran very smooth throughout the entire time of my play, and I can't have really any issues with it on that regard. If you're a die-hard fan of Blood Bowl, I definitely say you'll enjoy this iteration of the game. If you're a newbie, it's definitely welcoming enough to players. It's got a lot of multiplayer options for you out there going forward after you've beaten the campaign, or if you just like to play solo leagues, that's all there for you. Lots of options for creating your own teams, and yeah, I think this is a title that could have a lot of playtime available for you. So yeah, if you're into alternative sports, get it. But if you're sort of on the fence, I wouldn't blame you for waiting. So yeah, thanks for watching everyone, and remember to buy Bloodvisor, wear Orchidass, and to regularly beat your referee. It's Critical Rocket, signing out.